I'm Quentin Schultz, a professor of communication and also author of the book Communicate Like a True Leader. I want to start with a story, a mind-boggling story. This is an amazing story. This happened to a friend of mine out in California. He was a terrific speaker, a fabulous leader, and he would get invited to speak here and there and everywhere. And a friend of his contacts him and says, "Hey, would you as a favor be willing and come to speak to our group of Toastmasters?" Now, you know, Toastmasters are those who are learning how to become good speakers together. It's a fabulous group. I encourage you to join if you want to become a better speaker, a more comfortable, a more influential speaker, and have fun with other people. Learn along the way in an environment where you won't be criticized and looked down on if you're not a great speaker to begin with. Okay, Toastmasters. So he gets this invitation. And because it's from his friend, he says, "Yep, I'll do it. Don't worry about paying me or whatever." So he shows up at the venue. I think it was in a hotel ballroom, if I remember correctly. My friend has since passed away. And he goes in there to the group, and they're having a luncheon that he's going to speak at. And he sits down with his friend there at one of the tables, and he starts talking with his friend, and he says, "Okay, what can you tell me about this group besides the fact that they are Toastmasters?" And his friend says, "Toastmasters? These are not Toastmasters. These are Postmasters. P-O-S-T, Postmasters. They're people who run the post office and offices in that rural part of California." So here's my friend, and he had the audience completely wrong, completely misunderstood. What is he going to do? I mean, he's in deep trouble. So in a few minutes, he's madly thinking, making a couple notes on a napkin, and he can't just suddenly say, "I'm not going to speak." So his friend introduces him, and he gets up in front of this group in this hotel ballroom, and he says, "Well, I just want to start out by telling all of you that I am in trouble because I came here thinking that I was speaking to a group of Toastmasters, and in fact, I just discovered you're Postmasters." And silence for a few seconds, and then everybody starts laughing because they can imagine being in his situation now. Wonderful laughter. And as my friend tells the story, at that point, he had that audience in the palm of his hand because they could imagine risking face like that. Oh boy, what do you do? What do you do? So what did my friend do? He said, "Well, now that we know I have blown it and I can't use my prepared remarks, let me just think about this a minute." And he said, "You know, I believe that as Postmasters, it's a difficult job. Probably underpaid. You got a lot of staff that are underpaid, unhappy. You got things happening here and there, trucks breaking down, and it's stressful doing what all you are doing." So he said, "What I'd like to do is to talk with you about some ways that I handle stress in my life." And that's what he talked about. Totally unprepared. By the time he finished, people in that audience were crying. Mostly men, some women, and they were crying, hearing this speaker talk about the difficulties that he had had with stress in his life and how it affected him and his marriage and his work and his parenting. What happened there? What happened there? Well, this chapter in my book is titled Risking Face. Risking Face. We all risk face. Every day, we might make fools of ourselves in front of other people. In fact, I'm going to guarantee you right now, you will make a fool of yourself. Maybe today or tomorrow. It's going to happen. You will say dumb things. You will fail to listen well, and you'll misunderstand something. One time, I did an interview with a radio station in New Zealand. You know, New Zealand, the country of New Zealand. It was on the phone. I'm in the United States, living in Michigan. I do an interview with a station in New Zealand one morning. And you know what? I went into the interview thinking it was a local radio station in Zeeland, Michigan, a town you've never heard of. Live interview, and the guy starts asking me some questions about my book, and I'm answering those questions as if I'm speaking to an audience here in West Michigan, and it's an audience of people in New Zealand. And after a while, the host of the show says to me, Dr. Schultz, do you know where New Zealand is? I said, well, I assume it's a really small burg over down the road here by Zealand. He says, and now I'm picking up on his accent, Dr. Schultz, it's the nation, New Zealand. I'm thinking, holy smokes, I just made a complete fool of myself. Oh, boy. And he asked me, do I know where New Zealand is? The professor. Oh, man. We risk face every day. Robert Greenleaf, the founder of the field of servant leadership. Great guy, great writings. I encourage you to look into his work. Said this at one point. This is a quote from him from my book. He says, I submit that all masks like we wear chafe. I never saw a well-fitting mask. It is a great relief to take them off. Rip off our masks. You get what he's talking about here. Bob Greenleaf is talking about the fact that we, as human beings and as leaders, put on masks. We try to avoid people seeing us the way we really are. We try to create airs, an image, if you will. That's a common word today, right? We create a positive image in front of other people. Or to use the term from the ancient Greek rhetoricians, an ethos, a positive ethos. And in fact, we're different inside. We're different inside. I have never met a leader, regardless of the size of the organization, and I've known some that led some of the largest corporations in the world, who, when I got to the point where I could have an open discussion with them about their everyday life, they didn't confide in me some misgivings about their lives and some mistakes that they've made. And get this, the fact that others look up to them more than others should look up to them. There is no perfect human being. There is no perfect leader. Down deep, we all have self-doubt, and we put these masks on. That's what Bob Greenleaf, servant leadership, is talking about. So there comes a time, I believe, in the practice of leadership where we become better leaders when we open up with others, like my friend did when he was stuck in that situation where he had prepared a speech for the wrong group and he simply said, I got it wrong. I'm sorry. And let me tell you something that I think I feel strongly about, and you probably will too. And that's how we as human beings deal with stress. You know, I look at a lot of speeches online from leaders. And over my life, I have consulted with people who are leaders in for-profit and non-profit organizations. And one of the things I have learned is that there is too much of putting on masks and not enough opening up. Now, the opening up will, in fact, be a risk. And that's why in this chapter in my book, I call it a risk. We are risking losing face when we open up. But when we do open up in an appropriate, fitting way for the situation, we connect at a level of the heart, or what Bob Greenleaf would say, the soul, where people care more about us. They want to listen more to us. And we become more influential. And we build stronger relationships for the sake of the organization. Risk, face. Do it, consider it. I know that we might come across sometimes in ways that we don't like. Especially we don't like others to think about ourselves, the reality of who we are down deep. But it's a good practice. Risk face. Don't worry about saving face on everything. That will happen. But if along the way we open up, we have a much greater likelihood of building a stronger organization and becoming a greater leader. A leader who truly cares and loves for those that they serve. Pick up a copy of my book if you're interested in this and that chapter. It's Communicate Like a True Leader. I'll put a link down below. It's inexpensive on Amazon, and I'm glad to serve you in any ways that I can. Get in touch with me. Thank you.